Coming up on today's show, I want to run through Atlanta's biggest needs going into free agency, along with some targets at those needs. Now, I think it's important to note that a team may have, let's say, 5 positional needs. But if those needs don't align with the strengths of free agency and the markets for those positions, I don't think the Falcons, or any team for that matter, should be big buyers at that position simply because they need help at that position. Like, I think we all know Atlanta's biggest needs are Bueller, defensive line, outside linebacker, this is just edge rusher altogether, corner. Justin Simmons is a free agent. Drew Dalman's a free agent. But let's say they lose Drew Dalman in free agency and they now need a new center. I don't think they should go out and just spend a bunch of money at center because they need a center. Now, if your needs don't align with the strengths of free agency, then you should wait till the draft where it's much cheaper to fill those spots. But let's run through some of the more notable Falcons free agents, and I put down some predictions as to whether or not they're going to come back. Rondale Moore, I kind of want to upgrade it from a question mark. They traded for him. They never got to see him play because of an ACL tear early in preseason. But I'm sure the Falcons would be down to bring him back on a cheap contract since they traded for him in the first place. I think they're going to work very hard to bring back KhaDarel Hodge. He's terrific on special teams. Drew Dalman, I got that emoji for, I don't know, Jim. I think he's going to find more money elsewhere, but I'm sure Atlanta would love to have him back. Ryan Neuzil, he's a restricted free agent or exclusive rights, one of the two. He's going to come back one way or another. Storm Norton has been this team's swing tackle, and he's done a good job at it, so I'd be down to bring him back, but let's see if Atlanta decides to maybe go a different direction. Eddie Goldman, I thought played pretty well this past season, but he's kind of getting up there in the age column, and he sat out for 2 years, so 3 years almost. I think it is 3 years. COVID year, and then retired twice, so who knows? That's a coin flip with like 10 different sides on it. Kentavius Street, they re-signed him last offseason, so I'm leaning towards more likely than not. Judon, I did not think would be coming back, but I upgraded that to a question mark because of some rumors of a potential return. I don't see James Smith-Williams or Lorenzo Carter coming back. Landman, I think, could go either way. Dee Alford, I think, is likely gone. Hughes, I could see going either way, but I think maybe more so yes than no. Simmons is in the same boat as Dalman of, I don't know, Jim. Maybe, maybe not. I'd be on board, and I'll talk more about it later. And then Richie Grant, I don't think so. So those are some of the more notable free agents and some early predictions as to what's going to happen with them. We can revisit this in a few weeks here. But now I want to look at some external free agents at Atlanta's biggest needs, starting with the defensive line. I want to be specific here because I know we're searching for an edge rusher, but that comes in many sizes and shapes and forms. So with a 3-4 defense, which Atlanta run last year, and we'll see if Jeff Ulbrich wants to run it back, we're looking for a 5 technique, right? Kind of like a Calais Campbell, a defensive end who's going to put his hand in the turf every single play. Here are some of the more notable defensive ends. Dre'Mont Jones, a third-round pick by the Broncos, went to Seattle, underwhelming there. He was released early in his contract. Josh Sweat is probably the most popular name coming off a Super Bowl run. I think a team's going to overpay him because of that. I hope that team is not Atlanta because I just don't think Sweat can be your star pass rusher, and I think he's going to be paid like a star pass rusher. Some more affordable options, DeMarcus Walker, Derek Barnett, Trevis Gibson. I like those guys for what you could get in terms of what you pay versus what you get out of them. Chase Young obviously has a lot of name notoriety. Second overall pick, defensive rookie of the year not too long ago. Played every single game this past year when there were a lot of concerns about his availability. A neck injury that popped up during free agency last year. Obviously tearing his ACL early in Washington, but he looked pretty good for the Saints last season. So while I do think there are some good pros there, I have concerns over the maturity. Malcolm Kuntz, Charles Omenihu, and Marcus Davenport, some other names, along with Azeez Ojulari. Ojulari is young. He's the youngest, I think, of the bunch. He's 24 years old. So I could see a team giving him a nice, big, fat contract. Same goes for him as Josh Sweat. A team's going to pay him to be a star pass rusher. I don't think he is a star pass rusher. So I'd probably pass on Ojulari if it starts to become a bidding war. Now, one name I want to highlight is Malcolm Kuntz. Not a household name. Plays for the Raiders, third-round pick out of Buffalo. Missed all of 2024 with a preseason injury. But 2023, 9 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. 8 sacks would be the most on this team. 2024, 2023. I could probably keep going back, sadly. So don't brush him off because it's not double-digit sacks. Plus, I think teams are going to not give him a lucrative offer coming off an injury. And that could be an opportunity for Atlanta to pounce a little bit because there's just not a Danielle Hunter, right? There's not a Jonathan Grenard. Those were 2 star pass rushers in free agency last year. They're not here this year, so I'm not going to force it. I will force it in the draft, where there are plenty of great pass rushers. But I'm going to go bargain hunting in free agency, which might sound weird coming out of my mouth, but I don't want to see Atlanta just make a big signing for the sake of making a big signing. Be a little bit calculated. Now let's move on to the other spot, which is outside linebacker. Now, an outside linebacker is going to have different responsibilities than a defensive end. They're going to be responsible for dropping in coverage every so often. So you're looking for some more athletic guys and not just pure sellout for the pass. Here are some outside linebackers. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick, all notable veteran players. As is Matthew Judon. There's Lorenzo Carter, Darrell Taylor, Shaq Thompson, longtime Panther. Baron Browning, 3rd-round pick by the Broncos, has had some really good stretches, but some injury concerns. I forgot all about Josh Uche. Remember last year we were talking about trading for him? Yeah, he sucked for the Chiefs this past year. But if I'm going to highlight one name or two, I'm going to go with Khalil Mack. I think Khalil Mack can still play at a high level. And we saw that in 2023. That's not too many moons ago. Sure, big regression year in terms of just sack production from 2023 to 2024. But they also had some younger guys who really needed to break through a little bit. So Mack's snaps started to go down. You give Mack the same snaps he had in 2023 as he did in or same snaps in 2024 as he did in 2023, and you might not get 17 sacks, but you're going to get more than 6, a lot more than 6. Now, Bosa is another guy to keep an eye on because he could be released, he is released, so he could pop up on their radar. If we're going bargain hunting, though, Baron Browning is a name to watch for. He's not going to cost you much at all. He was traded from the Broncos to the Cardinals, only 2 sacks, so I'm not going to stand up here and pound my drum for him. But he's had some really good stretches with Denver. And I think if you can capture those stretches and extrapolate it over a 17-game sample size, you could get a really good pass rusher. He's got the coverage abilities. He played inside linebacker at college. He made the transition to outside linebacker. He's an athletic dude. He can play a lot of positions. He can be versatile for you. I'm not here advocating for him to be a player that's going to come into Atlanta and put up 12 sacks. But if you're looking for maybe a cheaper-ish option, this would be my cheaper, affordable target. So when it comes to the edge spot, do you think Atlanta needs to go out there and make the biggest signing of all 32 teams for a pass rusher? I would think so, right? They were 31st in sacks last year. But there's not a great option. Here's my bad Colin Cowherd analogy, all right? Let's say you're given $100 for dinner. You go to the restaurant and it sucks. You can spend all $100 because you have it. Maybe you just spend $50 and you keep the other $50 for something else, like a trade. That seems like a more viable path for me. On to the cornerback position now. So, you got a couple of free agents at cornerback for Atlanta, and we'll see whether or not they bring any of them back. But 3 starting corners and 2 are set to hit free agency. So let's check out some external options. Carlton Davis, he was really strong for the Lions before he got injured late in the season. Of course, we remember him from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Charvarius Ward is going to get way too much money. DJ Reed, I also think, is probably going to get too much money, but he also has the Jeff Ulbrich connection from their time in New York together. Byron Murphy, he's a starter. I don't think Atlanta's looking for starting corner type of player because that player wants starting corner type of money. They've got starting corner type of money going to A.J. Terrell. They're probably looking for a CB2 type of player who wants CB2 money. That could be more of like a Rasul Douglas, maybe a Dane. Although those guys are going to be right there on the fringe of CB2, CB1 type of money. I'm not opposed to a Mike Hughes reunion. I thought he played his role pretty well last year, right? You paid very little for him. You got not very little out of him, but you got average play. Now, the name that I've become more and more drawn to is Asante Samuel. You might get a little bit of a discount because he missed most of 2024, but this is a player who has a ton of familiarity and experience in a zone-based defense, and that is what Raheem Morris runs. I think Samuel is an excellent target. He's super athletic. He's got great lineage, as we all know. I think Samuel would be a fantastic signing for Atlanta. He would be one of my favorite targets for the Falcons in free agency. Very close to the top of the list, if not at the top of the list across all players. Now, as for Mike Hughes, if they do decide to bring him back, I'm not going to drown in misery and go, that's an awful decision. He never had an impact play, right? There was never a Mike Hughes moment, but he also wasn't a liability. He was really good at the start of the year. Later on in the season, I think the lack of the pass rush just started to wear on him a little bit, but I'm not opposed to a Hughes reunion, but I think you could definitely do better. Before we look at the other free agent targets out there, quick shout out to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. You see, over at Prize Picks, they put their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo and MasterCard for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season. So here is how it works. All you do is select 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. It's an awesome place to check out as we get towards March Madness if you want to have some extra interest while watching those games. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Let's talk about safety now, because this is not as pressing of a need compared to the other positions out there, but one of your 2 starting safeties is an unrestricted free agent. We'll see how much confidence Atlanta has in DeMarco Hellams, who missed all of 2024 with that ankle injury. The fact that I don't think they ever brought it back, right? We're going to fact check myself right now in real time here, but I don't remember him ever coming back last year. And the fact that he didn't come back this past season, yeah, he didn't. That ankle injury was not supposed to be season-ending in the preseason. So they probably just didn't want to give a roster spot to him. If they didn't want to give a roster spot to him, maybe they don't view him as a starter. So with that, or he suffered a setback in his ankle rehab. But anywho, I digress. Here are some external free agent targets along with Justin Simmons. There's no big-time name here, but you're not looking for a big-time name, right? You've got Jesse Bates. You just don't need a bad safety next to him. Now, I like the idea of Atlanta trying to pair Bates with Simmons to try and compensate for a lack of a pass rush and go, all right, if we're not going to get to the quarterback, then we're sure going to make it difficult for the quarterback to find an open receiver. And while Simmons did not have the usual takeaways we saw in Denver, I still think he was a good starting caliber safety in the league. One name I'm going to put on your radar is Jeremy Chin. You might remember him from the Panthers. He went over to the Commanders last year. Up and down is probably the best way to put it in a positive way, but I'd be interested in that. I don't expect Atlanta to spend big at the safety position. That's just not a room you see teams spend a ton at. And Atlanta has already made one big safety free agent investment. I don't expect them to match that with another big safety free agent investment. So I'd like to roll it back with Justin Simmons. I'm sure we were hoping for a little bit more, but man, boo-hoo, 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. What a bad year. The interceptions came early in the season, right? You had the one against the Chiefs, and I can't remember when the second one was, but regardless, I think for what he's probably going to get in free agency, last year I think he signed a $7 million contract. Probably going to be closer to $5 million this year. I'd be content with having some continuity at the back end. I don't think he was the biggest problem in that secondary or close to it. Now let's talk about some center options. Only if Atlanta loses Drew Dalman, center is going to become a bit of a need for the Falcons. I've only got one option. I've only got one target, and it's an internal option. It's Ryan Neuzil, the guy who replaced Drew Dalman, who missed a good chunk of this past year with an ankle injury. Started 12 games over the past 2 seasons. He knows the playbook. He knows the team. He has not been disappointing or underwhelming. Is he as good as Dalman? No, he's not. Is he much cheaper than Dalman? Yes, he is. So if you're going to get into a bidding war with Drew, it's all right if you raise the French flag, surrender, and go, we're going to go with a much cheaper option, take that money and spend it elsewhere, maybe on like Asante Samuel and an edge rusher, right? I'm not advocating for Dalman to leave the Falcons. I'd like for him to come back, but I also have just been reading between the lines here, and all signs point to Atlanta is prepared to lose Dalman in free agency. All right, before we sign off, make sure to share the video if you haven't yet. Send it to a friend. Send it to a family member. Put it online. Tag me on Twitter @MatthewPD, and that way I can give you a shout-out on a future episode.